Frankel. He's a software architect with 15 years of experience on consulting for different customers of a wide range of contexts. He's currently working for an e-commerce solution vendor leader, and he also works as a teacher in universities and higher education schools, trainer, and besides this, he's also a book author. Today, he will talk us about Spring Boot and Kotlin, a match made in heaven. Please welcome him.
Thank you. It looks super serious when someone reads it. Probably next time I will just geek and it will be good. So thank you. Welcome here. Welcome to this conference. I'm Nicolas Frankel, and as you introduced me already, probably I should skip that and go directly to the meat of the talk. And basically, who knows here knows about the Spring Framework? Good. Who knows about Spring Boot? Okay, everybody. That's cool. Everybody here who doesn't use Spring Boot already? Okay, a few people. So let me introduce it very quickly then. Basically, Spring Boot is all about convention over configuration. When I was younger and I had to create a Spring project, I told my developer guy, okay, take a little pause and go away for 2 days. I will craft the POM or the Gradle if you are using Gradle, but I'm using Maven. And I crafted my POM. I chose every dependency, every version, made sure everything was right. Then I started creating like a use case with the architecture, and everything was set. And after 2 days, finally, I could tell my team, okay, you come back in and all is ready. You can start doing the real work. And it was not hard, but it was time consuming. And now with Spring Boot, you can really be very, very quick when you create a project. But I personally, it's no fun for each project to create monitoring system around it. How to get the metrics out of the app and put it into wherever so they can be used. It's no fun. Now you have the actuator, you get the dependency, and you've got endpoints. Who here doesn't know about the actuator in Spring Boot? Not so many, so good. So just check. So for me, like Spring Boot is really, really great toward productivity. And now on the other side, you've got this new language, Kotlin, which is offered by JetBrains, and perhaps you know about it that at the previous Google I/O, Google said now Kotlin will be officially supported on the Android platform. Like before, it was unofficially supported because or perhaps not every, but many Google engineers themselves, they use Kotlin. But they didn't tell it officially. But now it's official. So if you have a good company like JetBrains offering a language and a gigantic company like Google supporting it officially, it's a good sign. It means it's mature enough. It means you can probably use it. So what is what is Kotlin? Sorry. So the first thing is Kotlin is open source. Don't be afraid to use it because it's proprietary stuff. It's open source. You can already use it. The first thing that you have to know about Kotlin is that it compiles to bytecode. So if you are already using Java, there is no problem. You can already use Kotlin already with zero problem. You can use all the Java libraries. You can also use Kotlin to compile or to transpile to JavaScript if you are a front-end developer. So basically, you can have a full-fledged project, front-end, back-end, made in Kotlin. One part of the project compiles to bytecode, runs on the JVM. The other transpiles to JavaScript and runs in the browser. And I don't know if any of you is a JavaScript developer. I like to troll about JavaScript. You know this book where there's JavaScript, the guide, and JavaScript, the good parts. So yeah, you can really like use a real production safe language with Kotlin and still do front-end development. and something which is still experimental. Now you can write Kotlin code and you can create iOS apps with it. So you can think about Kotlin, you can do everything in your company and on every device, on everywhere. And I like to refer to Kotlin as a simple Scala. Like some years ago, I was very motivated and I said, hey, I will do the Coursera course on Scala. It was good. I learned a lot of things with Scala. Basically, it changed my way to write Java code as well, because it made me think about why are we creating getters and setters all the time and stuff like that. Still, I kept it on the shelf because for me it was amazingly powerful and amazingly complicated. It could be like, you know, with great power, great responsibility. And I didn't picture my team using Scala because, I mean, if you have like 2 Scala developers and you tell them to write a simple code, then you will find 3 different ways of writing it. So, and for me, Kotlin is really focused on the real stuff. So, Kotlin stole a lot of stuff from other language, mainly Scala as well. So it's both functional and object-oriented. Functional means you can already have functional stuff from the collections. You don't need to get the stream, a stream out of a collection, do your stuff, and then collect it back to a regular collection like you do in Java. You can do stuff directly on the collection. You have mutable and immutable collection. It is statically typed, so it's not scripting language. Something very interesting, there is null safety. Basically, it means that I see a lot of people coming in. It's very strange. Who here, that's a question, who here doesn't know nothing about Kotlin? Should I go on, or do you already know about Kotlin? Who here knows about Kotlin? Half the room, so I will continue, sorry. So null safety, meaning that in Java, sometimes you don't know whether a variable might be null or not, so you have a lot of if my stuff is not null, then I continue. In Kotlin, you have types that might be nullable and types that cannot be nullable. So baked into the language is the concept of null safety, that if something cannot be nullable, the compiler tells you, hey, it cannot be nullable, and it's really checked at compile time that it cannot be nullable, then in that case, there is no reason to do an if. On the other hand, if you try to access a method or a property of a variable of a nullable type, then in that case, the compiler enforces the fact that you must do the if before. So it's baked into the language. The compiler like enforces it. There are no checked exceptions because, yeah, it was a good idea, but it didn't work out in the end. Named arguments. How many times did you write a method or a constructor with argument of the same type? Like, let's create a person, I have first name, I have last name, both are strings. And every time you call the constructor, you must think, is it first name first and last name last, or first last name and then first name? And it's a mess. And it's a mess. The only way to know about it is you look at the API. With name constructor, you can say first name equals my value, last name equals my value, and you can say the first name is second, you don't care, because you have name arguments. That's very cool. Optional arguments are also very useful because it allows you not to do some override, like I have a constructor or method and I can call it with different kind of arguments. Some of them are optional, some of them are required, but then I have to chain them. And that is also not very readable. With optional values on arguments, you can only have one method, and then you provide the default value. We will set in the demo. You've got lambdas because it's a functional language. You've got extension. I have a dedicated slide for that. It's really, really great. And for me, the killer feature is Java compatibility, is 100% Java compatibility. I mean, if you write Scala codes, I don't troll Scala, I'm just telling the facts. Like if you run Scala code, you can call Java code from Scala very easily. But the reverse is not true. If you call Scala code from Java, it's a mess. It's really a big mess. Kotlin lets you interact with Java code seamlessly. And it has a very big, very important consequence. It's in that case, you can migrate your Java project bit by bit. You don't need to migrate all your code base in one big bang. And that's what the people at JetBrains are basically doing. They had this IDE called IntelliJ, and they wanted to do better, to code better, but they couldn't allow themselves to migrate in one go these millions lines of code base. So one of the core principles behind Kotlin is you must be able to work with Java seamlessly. So this is Kotlin code, very simple Kotlin code. So yeah, like all modern languages, there is no reason to write semicolons because line breaks are doing that for you. You can have function not attached to a class because in Java it's object-oriented, so every method must belong to a class. But how many static methods did you write in your life? And you had to attach them to a class. And you didn't know what to call that class. And it ended up being utils or string utils or det utils, which is basically not really object-oriented. So not everything is object-oriented. I'm sorry. Not everything is an object. So in that case, let's create a function and let's not be artificial. Let's not put artificial constraint on that. And the function is attached to nothing. Also, if you write UML code, for example, UML diagrams, then you are used to first having the name of a variable and then the type of the variable, which is opposite to what Java does. So Kotlin lets you copy-paste into UML diagrams. Yeah, it's not a big advantage, but it's still worth mentioning. An array is a real type. And here, for example, we don't return anything. We print something, we don't return anything, and the compiler is smart enough not to force us to say, we return void. The compiler is smart. So if you don't return nothing, then it's void. And in Kotlin, it's called unit. For me, there is one very important thing, is the extension function. And extension properties, but to a less extent. I already talked about the static method. What you do when you write Java code and you want to write something on the string, for example, and the problem is the string is a class from the JDK. So you cannot do anything with it. And more, it's final, you cannot extend it. And you have two lowercase, two uppercase, but you want to camel case, for example. What would you do? Are you Java developers? Write a wrapper around it? Yeah, that was not my first reflex. Generally, people write a static method on a string utils.class, and they call string utils dot to camel case, and they pass the parameter of string. And you can write a wrapper as well, but it's not object-oriented. I mean, a wrapper is object-oriented, but then it makes your code more complex. In Kotlin, you can add behavior and add state to an existing class, whether it's final or not. And in that case, you can add the toCamelCase method to the string type. And this, it's like grafting something. And this grafting can take place in your own scope, in your own file. It doesn't leak anywhere else. Or you can make it public and provide it as a feature. So I won't show it here in this talk because it's not useful in this talk. But if you happen to have this kind of problem, like you have many utility class, just check this extension stuff. Well, I've talked a lot. Let's show some code. So the first thing is when I write a Spring Boot application, I go on the start.spring.io. You know about this site, right? Okay. Kotlin is a first-class citizen on start.spring.io. That's the first thing. Of course, it also works if you are using IntelliJ, because, of course, IntelliJ wants to promote their own stuff, and that's normal. So, for example, here I can choose the Kotlin. Nothing prevents you from doing Kotlin. Okay, so here, let's assume that it was my project, I downloaded it, and I want to create a little application, and I want to create a REST controller. So I will call it welcome controller. And since I'm very lazy, everything is, oh, it's not the one I wanted, sorry. It's hello controller first. Okay. So this is simple Kotlin. You see there are some differences. For example, by default, if you don't say anything, it's public. How many times did you have to write public in a class? In Java, every time. So good thing is by default, it's public. We say that Kotlin is fun, because to say that it's a function, the keyword is fun. That's a bit of difference. With Java, where everything can be a method, there is just a syntax. Here we say fun. And of course, we can try to run it. It works seamlessly. Okay. A good thing in Kotlin is that in Java you've got a lot of, I mean, if you write good Java code with components, stuff, you've got very small methods, even one-liners sometimes, like here. And in Kotlin, these one-liners can very well be really one-liners. You don't need to create a body. It's called an expression body. So if something in an expression, it can be a one-liner. Even better, here, obviously what we're returning is a string. You know it. Why in Java doesn't the compiler knows it? The Java compiler is very stupid. Very stupid. The Kotlin compiler, on the opposite, is much smarter. Because here, since it's a string, it knows that we are returning a string. And since it's very well integrated into the IDE tells you, yeah, it's a string. But, I mean, you don't even need that. And if we run it again, just to be sure, it still works. Good enough? Okay. Let's go a little further. And let's create another controller. And here I want to show you about string interpolation. So I'm using the same syntax, but I want to greet someone. And if you do some string, you know that if I call this method, I will basically greet the person that is set on the URI. And in Java, you would have to do string concatenation. Here, in Kotlin, you don't need to do that. There is string interpolation. So you don't need, like if you do GPAQL, for example, you don't need to write all this big line or to concatenate string. You already have it ready for you. So if I, again, test it, but here it would be more like Patroklos. Sorry, I don't know many Greek names. Huh? I'm very limited. So here it's the same. And because I'm using the name of the variable is compiled, so I don't need to set here the who stuff. I don't need that. So that's great. Already that makes the code much more readable, much more concise. It's not because it's concise that it's better. It's because it's expressive. And even if you are a Java developer, you've never seen any Kotlin, you understand it. So now my next step that I want to show you is I want to create I create a Java class, which is not what I wanted. Welcome controller. I want to tell you about default values. And I create a class welcome. So here, my welcome class has 2 parameters. But here, I call it with only 1, because I told you about default parameters, values. So here, whatever I say that if it's a simple welcome, I will run my code here. Then, by default, the what value is welcome, because it's written here. Of course, nothing prevents me from saying greetings to someone like that. And then, I will pass greeting. Of course, it's Spring Boot, so if I pass any entity, it will get serialized to JSON. So here, you can see that this class, in fact, has getters, but no setters. Why doesn't it have any setters? Because here, there is a keyword val, which is basically like in Scala, meaning it's immutable value. Once I pass it, it won't be able to change. Of course, I could do the same with var, which means then Kotlin would create a setter for that. But in general, it's better to only have val. What we can do now is notice that, well, here, of course, it's big for the screen to see, but in general, if you are writing codes, you will have a lot of blank space because you have all those one-liners. Which means, in turn, that you lose a lot of space on your screen and you have tabs to see each file separately, which is not great. What we can do in Kotlin is that there is nothing preventing us from declaring multiple public classes into the same file. And I can remove the hello controller, and I can rename that and say controllers. And now, no space is lost again. I can see multiple small components into one. It changes your life, really. Because now your code is longer, you use more the width of the screen, and less the length. So you can put more stuff, and you could put, since you put more stuff on your screen, you put more stuff in your head. And if you do a lot of maintenance work, it's very, very important. So far, so good. We've done Spring so far, but I mean, what the core feature of Spring that I didn't show you? Dependency injection, sure. So let's inject. So the first thing to do is to create a service. So welcome service. And in that welcome service, I will need a welcome repository. And in one file, I will show you also how to use a repository. Who knows about the Spring Data GPA? Not so many people. Okay, so just like in 2 words, Spring Data GPA is a Spring component which lets you basically just inherit from an interface, and you don't try to write anything if it's very simple. Like if you do like find by ID in GPA, but if you have a select in GPA, what would you do? You would need to create the GPA QL or the criteria API. That is not great. If you inherit from this CRUD repository of the welcome, then you can write any find by what, and it will, and here you pass a what, and you say it's type string, and you return a list of what. This kind of stuff, and of what, sorry, of welcome. And then Spring Data GPA will create the query for you. It's amazingly powerful, and more importantly, it's the dream of the lazy developer, which I am. So if you are lazy, and you should be, then use Spring Data GPA instead of writing tons of GPQL that nobody can understand. Anyway, so here I'm using that. And my next point will be, injection. So injection is very easy. I want to inject the service in my controller. I just create a private val, and I inject the service, and I've injected it. Why do I say private? Because here, if I say val, then Kotlin will create a getter. There is no difference, it's a regular class, so it will create a getter. Since I don't want to expose the dependency, and I hope that you don't do it in Java as well, because I've seen it in some projects. Not mine, never mine. Huh? But I hope that you don't do it, but you don't expose dependency, so you say private. And presto, since you have done that, you can basically do that kind of stuff. So here I will list everyone, and I will use a service, and the service is a get all. And service is very stupid. It's just say find all. Again, find all is a method that is basically part of the CRUD repository that will be filled in at runtime. Also notice that here, I didn't specify the return type, but again, the ED is very, very nice to me until it tells me what I will be returning. I can run it. What did I forget? The database? No, the database I did, yes? No, there is only select. But if I'm running with GPA, why did I forget? Entity, yeah. Entity and ID. Entity and ID. So since I'm lazy, I will say that who is the ID? And it shouldn't work. Yes? Yes. I can inject here as many services as I want. I can inject. That's something I forgot to mention is that in Java, you separate between the constructor and the class. Mostly, however, you only write one single constructor for every one of your class. If you really need it, you write one constructor. It happens you might write multiple ones, but it's not the general case. So Kotlin and Scala as well, they merge the concept of constructor and class declaration. So that's why here you don't see any constructor. And you could add more constructor. In general, though, you don't need it. And you don't need it, again, because of those default values here. So I added entity, I added ID, but normally it shouldn't work. Yes. Because I forgot about having a default constructor. So let's add a default constructor. And now it works. But GPA is very bad because it forces me to do something against my will. Because GPSF specifications say you should have a default no-org constructor. That means that now, even though I don't want it, I can create a function anywhere. Let's say, sorry, function foo, and I will have a new welcome service. So vol service equals welcome service with no welcome repository. No, it doesn't work like that, so I have to create it here. So here I can create fun foo, and here I say, okay, I want to create a new welcome, and I create it like that. I didn't want that. I wanted everyone to have a parameter of woo, and I cannot do it. So I had to compromise with my design. I'm not happy about that. I don't like compromise. I'm French. We go to strike. So how can we do it? Well, it's quite easy, basically. If you know about it, like everything, we can hack the compiler. So how do we hack the compiler? Is we find the build compiler, which basically is this one, and we will say something like that. It added two things. It added a dependency on the compiler called the Kotlin Maven no-org plugin, and there is a configuration called GPA. So now, if I rebuild it again, so I have to stop it and rerun it. Sorry, I have to remove that, of course, because I don't want any compromise. So the first thing that I see here is now it tells me that what I let developers do is not possible anymore. So I'm back to my usual constraint design, which is good. So here I say hello, Patroclus. But more importantly, if I really restart the stuff, it runs again. So there is a bit of black magic involved. Basically, when you are using this plugin, it creates a synthetic constructor, meaning it's available by reflection, but available as a regular API. You know this synthetic stuff? Huh? It's basically a JVM keyword. It's not Java keyword. Java doesn't know about anything about synthetic. So that's cool. Let's go further. What I know I want to do is I hate self-annotated class. I hate them. I really hate them. I want... Why is that funny? I'm telling you about what I hate and you find that funny. Okay, I will create, as far as I can, some stuff here needs to be like scanned, but something can be not scanned. So I will put everything that needs to be scanned. So the application needs to be scanned. Some controllers, let's say they need to be scanned. But here I said that I will rename that into welcome, because I can rename anything. And here I will create a new Kotlin file called welcome with different content. And what I don't want to be scanned, so for example, the entity needs to be scanned because it's an entity, otherwise it won't work. And the repository needs to be scanned because otherwise Spring won't create the class. Now I just need to say like that and to say like that. Hey, wait, welcome repository, please inject it. Add Maven dependency, what the f? Yes, thanks. Okay, now it works again. And now what I want is to explicitly create my stuff. So here, I can say bean and function controller. And I want it to return a controller, a welcome controller. But again, we don't care so much because it's a one-liner. So we say welcome controller. It needs a welcome repository, so welcome service. We create a new welcome service, and it needs a welcome repository. This welcome repository, we cannot create it ourselves, so we say that we inject a welcome repository here. Repository of type welcome repository, and we inject it here. Good. And what did I forget? Yes. Here we must say open. Open. Now finally it works. The only difference is now my stuff is in another package. So I say auto. I restart it. Runs again. So now I don't let the language or whatever tells me how I should do things. I say I don't want auto scanning by default. I want to create this thing myself. I do it. But you see, the IDE told me that I had to tell the thing that is open. You know what open means in Kotlin? In Kotlin, everything is final. In Java, everything is open. You can extend anything, and you must think about saying final. Who here uses final? Oh, that's good, guys. Me, I never do because I'm super lazy. I mean, I'm developing applications. I'm not developing libraries, so I don't care. But if you read some books, then you say, hey, final should be the default. Yeah, but you have to write an extra keyword, and you never do it. In Kotlin, it's reverse. By default, everything is final, and you must write an extra keyword to make it extendable. And Spring Boot, with configuration classes, everything must be open. Everything must not be final because they will create like a child class and do black magic. So if you forget about open, it will tell you, I cannot do that. Not great. So okay. But I'm lazy, and I don't want to write every time I want to write open, because perhaps you are not using IntelliJ or whatever. Okay, that's good. Don't worry, everything is taken care of. Little music is always nice. Let's add a dependency, and it's called Kotlin open. Kotlin open, please, guys. Open, open, all open, sorry. Maven all open. And I need a configuration saying I will use Spring. Because all open, you have to define what will be open, just like no org, I defined what classes will be have a default constructor, but here the configuration is already cooked in for you. So you just said that, and now look, the IDE doesn't complain anymore. The IDE is happy, and me as well. I can restart. And I can check that it still works. And now I don't have to even to think about, oh, this is a configuration class, I have to make it open, or look, my ID, I just write, and the compiler, the Kotlin compiler takes care of it for me. Now, I still have perhaps some more minutes, and because I'm super lazy, I will do this kind of stuff that you should do in demos because you are super lazy is use git reset, remove, and reset. So this is on the snapshots. So perhaps it won't work, but if it does, it will be super cool. Should I do it? Yes, okay. You want me to look stupid in front of you, great. Okay, you might have heard about this functional DSL. So basically, injection, bin declaration is all about annotations, whether you put them in a separate configuration class or if you have self-annotated class. And a lot of people are bitching about annotations because it's too magical. With Spring 5 and Kotlin, what you can do is you can define this kind of stuff. No annotations, regular methods. No more bitching about annotations and everything is magical and whatever. So here, you just create your beans. Of course, I mean, I had to use like an existing method, but the rest is just what you understand. And here, the only difference is we are saying, okay, we inject what's need to be injected here. But that was exactly what we did before. Why I injected the repository, I said repository, welcome repository. The name of the variable I choose, and the type, it was just the right type. So here I can say, okay, I want to inject a welcome repository. However, since the constructor of the welcome service requires a welcome repository anyway, this is just noise. And the IDE tells you, yeah, you can remove it because it's inferred. You are really stupid, I know it. And you should know as well. And how do you use it afterwards? Well, you just need to hack into the Spring Boot lifecycle and initialize the context with your beans. And in that case, you are again being explicit, so you can be fully explicit. I prefer explicitness over implicitness all the time, but that's my thing. I think that for the demo, it's good. If you are interested into going even further, you might know that now with Spring Web, you have Webflux, and basically you have everything reactive. Don't do it unless you really, really have these requirements. Don't do it because someone did it, or because it's hype, or because you want it on your resume. You do it because really it's required. Please don't do it. You might look into this documentation. The effort of Spring Boot and Kotlin integration is made by this guy. He's called Sébastien Deleuze. He's a French guy. He's a very good developer. So you might look at this URL. And if you want the talk by Josh Long, he also did a talk about Spring Reactive and Kotlin. You can watch the talk. It's about 30 minutes. It's really good. So the key takeaway is that Spring Boot loves Kotlin. So if you like to be productive, if you are lazy in a smart way, not really lazy, but really lazy in a developer way, then you should as well. Now some time for QA, and I should remove that because now I receive a lot of requests on my LinkedIn, so I should remove it. The rest, however, might be of interest to you. More importantly, so okay, my blog, my Twitter, but more importantly, they are the sources for the code I showed you. So you might be interested in forking it. I will tweet the slides afterwards at Voxxed Thessaloniki. So of course you are welcome to take pictures, but it's not required. Perhaps there are some questions. That is very bad sign. Ah, thank you. You saved my life. Can you take the mic, please? Because otherwise people won't understand. No. The screen worked, but now the mic doesn't work. So I will listen to the question and I will repeat.
So you told us before that Kotlin has null safe types, and we saw that during defining some classes, we had constructor parameters that were injected. Are there were null safe? So the compiler knows that the service will be injected and let you to call the instance, or we have to do something, some null checks there?
So about null safety, yeah, you are right. So the compiler doesn't know about it. So it trusts you. It trusts you. Like for example, you have the same problem if you call some methods from the Android library. If you are doing Android projects, because Kotlin is very used in Android stuff. By default, it will tell you that everything can be nullable, but you might know that it's not nullable when you call this API. So you have to change the type. However, if at this time you receive a null, of course it will explode. So you must take really care into like making sure that this cannot be null. If you want to be able to inject possible nullable types, then of course you say it might be nullable, and then when it starts the Spring context, and if it's null, everything is fine. But of course, if you say it's not null, and then at the startup something is null, it will explode. But at least you will fail fast. Other questions? Yeah.
Hello, I would like to ask about Kotlin's black magic, about when it compiles. If we use lazy typing, for example, in return types of the methods, does it take more time to compile?
That's a good question. Actually, I don't know. I don't know about that. What I know is that Kotlin compile time is like on par with the Java one. On Scala, the compile time of Scala, you have the implicit parameters. You have a lot of stuff. I mean, I don't know, perhaps 20 steps to compile. Kotlin, I never had any complaint, and I never seen any lag in compile time like in Java.
So, have you used it in very large projects to compare?
No, I didn't make any benchmark, but you might try to find them on Google. I mean, the subject, to be honest, is unknown to me because I've never seen it mentioned anywhere.
Thank you.
Hi, I have a question which is purely Kotlin related. So when you were talking about this functional way of dependency injection, we saw some named closures there. So I was just wondering, how does that work in Kotlin? In Groovy, these are methods which take closure as a parameter. I don't know how it works in Kotlin.
Okay, perhaps I can show you something very quickly. So I will define I will create a new file. Perhaps it will be easier. New Kotlin foo. Yeah. Thank you very much. So I have a function foo which checks basically a string, and a lambda which takes a parameter a string and returns, I don't know, a string. Yep. And which will be called I don't know, init. What did I forget? It's not a body, and it returns unit. What did I forget? Function foo must have a body. Somebody helping me? No? It's, yeah, must be better like that. So I don't know why it doesn't compile right now. It's just backed in, I didn't prepare it. So basically, it takes one parameter and another lambda parameter. So this kind of function, you can call it like that. Function, like foo, passing a string, and something which takes a string and returns a string, for example. The good thing is that if it's the last parameter, then you can call it like that. Exactly like you would do in other languages. By default, the name is called it, so I can remove it even like that. And I can, of course, say it's I don't know, foo, and then, well, foo, I don't like it, but bars, and return it again. This kind of stuff. So this is the way you can create DSLs, for example, in a very, very nice way. Like in Groovy, but statically typed. Time is up. Thank you very much. If you still have questions, you are welcome to come to me, and thanks for your attention.